My name is Alexander Sventon,
I'm
and here we got also Irina Temchus, and together we are the hosts of NonA Talks, a kind of series of events that we try to speak to the winners together with a jury. In this case, thank you, Emile, for joining us as well. Because that's our kind of biggest goal, to connect this jury and participants together. And Irina, would you like to talk about what we are going to discuss today?
So today's event is about energy independent architecture, and it's based on the competition called the Powerless City, which is a part of a series called Cities of Tomorrow. Shortly about the brief, the participants of the competition were asked to imagine a scenario where we ran out of all the usual sources of energy we are knowing today, and in a world like this, they needed to create something very conceptual that would represent or that give energy independency to buildings or even individuals. So putting aside all the energy resources we will run out, we will need to come to the creative way, and we discovered lots of them in your submissions. So let's get to the next stage.
We hope to discuss them a little bit today. But first of all, you are guys kind of this today's stars, and I would like to introduce you very briefly who we got here. Firstly, Emile Revier, thank you for coming. He's the partner at the Dutch Urban Agency, PosadMaxwan, that from what we always do a beautiful kind of imaginative designs regarding about energy, urban transformations, and mobility or water management, for example. And Emile is kind of one of the and that was judging you a little bit. He was giving his own opinion about your projects. So we hope to hear from him a little bit about your projects. Hello. And then we got our winners from the Loop City, Foggers from Turkey. It's amazing to have you all here. Because that's a very unusual to have 4 people in a team, and unusual for these times, because from what we notice, it's for young people is more and more difficult to actually collaborate together, from what we notice. So it's amazing that you actually do that and participate in these competitions, because it's a great thing for now and for the future. Then we get 2 honourable mentions. Siki, who presented his Away from the City project, full of different technologies regarding the energy independent architecture, where he tried to create a peaceful moment in the city, that we hope to kind of hear a little bit more about it. And we got Will from New Zealand. That's it's a 12-hour difference, so really thank you for coming. She's the honorable mention of the wind power, where she created a beautiful illustration of how the city could look like if the cars had sails and people would power up the city with the bikes.
All right. And before proceeding to the discussion, I would like to let you all know that in case you want to participate to another competition or anyone else discussion, we have a discount code you can use, NonA Talks, and it will guarantee you 20% off from the actual price you pay. So don't forget to use it the next time.
So to start and maybe to break a little bit the ice, I would like to relate questions to your entries and to your thoughts and opinions. And it's basically about your cultural background and how it affects the energy independent architecture, maybe your projects. And I mean it in the entries that you have done or the thoughts that you have, and also the company, as Emile is here, how your cultural background influences your decisions on everyday basis. Emile, would you like to start with that question?
Yes, well, thank you, and thank you for having me tonight. At least it's night where I am. It's 7 o'clock in the evening here. Well, let me start off by saying it was really wonderful to see all the entries and that there is so much creativity and talent in these put in these projects, and also I see a lot of love in the way that you guys are executing the profession. I know some of you might be less experienced, but it's not something I see in sort of the key elements that I believe you really needed as a designer, which is that you try to combine a good analysis and good thought of what is the actual what's the actual question at hand that you're trying to uncover part of a solution for, and that the second part is that you then try to transform that into something solid and concrete. And the last part is how you present it. And I think on all three parts, I've seen great stuff. So basically, this is also a methodology we use in our office. It's called ANP or ADP. And it means analyze, design, and present. And it's something that we use as a circular flow within our project. So we don't just do it once, we do it about 500 times in one project. So we're constantly in this circle of analyzing, designing, and presenting to ourselves, to our clients, to everybody involved. That is something you guys couldn't do because you're in a competition. So you have to do the loop yourself and then end up with something like this. And well, I was very inspired with the stories behind the design, but also very much with the diversity and the richness in the graphic representation of all the plants. So that was great. And to answer your question, how we deal with it in our office, well, we kind of work on, I think right now on two levels. The thing which I think is so great when you work in urbanism is that you're actually very close to the large powers at hand. And I'm not energy powers, but political powers. You're very close to the decision makers, which is very different when you're an architect, because when you're an architect, you basically just execute something for a client. But what we do is for city governments, national government, provincial governments, sometimes the EU. And that means that you also get to influence that democratic process. And I think concerning the energy transition and thinking about how we use energy, that went very, very fast in the past decade, from it being a sort of a hobby from some left-wing politicians to being sort of, I think, one of the mainstream goals, which led to massive funding in all parts of the world. And also big industries seeing the need, recognizing the need to transform. So it has really unleashed a lot of power. It led to us to starting a new company, which is called Generation Energy, which is focusing on the implementing the energy transition. And we take on the task on how you do that in a complex spatial environment. So quite the opposite from what you guys were doing, because I think a lot of you took the liberty to just explore, and I think that's really great. Loop City, I think, is an example of that, where you can just really I think the only thing you guys really took into account was gravity, but for the rest you kind of sort of just took the idea that anything goes. And I think that I also saw that in some really wonderful other entries. And I think that's very powerful, because it also makes us think as professionals, like where can we work beyond the boundaries of what we work in usually. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much for your invitation as well.
Really, thank you for insightful kind of also the introduction to that and the comment about the entries. Guys, we got this global perspective in this case how it actually works in the office, and I'm really grateful for hearing that. what was your approach, guys? How did you kind of started the process of designing this? Sisiki, would you like to start?
Me? Okay, sure. Well, I'll first let's just formally sort of introduce myself. So, hi, I'm Siki from China, and I learn and currently doing architecture here in United Kingdom in Manchester. So, speak all the project, I have to speak say something about my final year's research, which is about the energy independency and how humans' development to the energy infrastructure around the North Sea and also the North Sea region, which is the sea area, sea territory between the UK and Netherlands, Germany, and Belgium, etc. So from that research, I noticed because from the history of North Sea, people are start to developing the North Sea with fish, from the fishermen, fishing and then into the oil production, and now it came to the wind energy and solar energy, etc. So through that long history, I see how for example, how the environment changes affect humans' activities and how human responds to it. Before we treat oil as a sort of major production as to build up our human society, but now we turn into sustainability issues, which we more prefer like solar energies, wind turbines, etc. Yeah, so that is basically the sort of starting point of my project, and also because when I first read the topic powerless cities, I misunderstood it because when I say powerless, I thought the cities lose its dominance in the human society, so we can separate it, we can flee from the cities. That's why I name my project as Away from City. And so, being that case, so the submission I did was based on my previous project as a student, and I picked a site which is quite away from Manchester in the jungle area next to the lake, which is fascinating to the natural environment, but also based on the topic, is the combination of every sustainable energy I already learned or I know or I did the research of it. I just combine all together. So it might not be true because when doing the practice, you sometimes realize that the wind turbines are not really feasible to build within the neighborhood area because of the noise. But it's sort of an imaginary thing to say, well, it can be beautiful if we combine all the sort of things together. It's sort of aesthetic view to it. Yeah, that's it.
Exactly, and this is what we would like to kind of talk that avoiding a little bit of this, political and economical constraints that we, in reality, we need to have. But here, I'm interested in your ideas. That's why you actually followed those issues, and you were full of kind of technology, which is great that you are each of I see that in students works we are putting this amount of technology, we are researching that, we are actually giving reasons for those, and this is amazing. And you gave completely something else, like you developed two beautiful ideas, more like a storytelling, a little bit, and I wanted to ask actually why did you imagine, and how did you imagine that the cars, for example, could have sails and be in the city, and what would you like, what you wanted to convey with that?
Hello. So my name is Will, and I'm study third year architecture. I'm at University of Auckland, so I'm in New Zealand. I'm sorry, it's a bit early today. This my idea based on like my inspiration from my hobbies, because I love to sail, and then I always wonder if like we can just move like using the same technique as we use in sailing, but in cars, or when we like going around, or like because when you like bike somewhere, you use like your own energy, so why don't convert it and then use it like as like electric power? So like and the windmills that from every house, I mean, it's just like more like a childhood like imagination of like when hear like bedtime story from mom and dad. So like I think if you use windmill or something, it's gonna become like wind driven like electric power system for the each house. So I think I think just like this competition just give me kind of freedoms to be creative and then use those like something that my experience that not relate to architecture into the competition, which I find it really interesting. Yeah.
I think it's actually opposite of what you just said, that you sometimes these things that you think that may not relate, and you actually proved it opposite, that you use some stories, some memories, and you put it into architecture, and that's actually a beautiful kind of story here. And that you heard it from mom and dad, yeah? Did I hear that right? That there was a story from your part, and I think that's kind of this kind of childhood experience that influence on that. It's actually some beautiful thought, and I think really great idea came up as we saw. What do you think, the others? I will put the entry as well in the chat so all of us can see. Because I love this kind of illustrative. I love each entry, of course. But feel free to get into the conversation too.
Yeah, well, if I can just comment, I think of this entry, I think this is an example of the how rich the sort of the graphic representation of this competition is, because I think what Siki did was basically, I think, a very beautiful architectural drawing of imagining sort of a construct of, actually, when you look at his drawing and you really zoom in, it's like it's a collection of very ugly things that people regard as being very, very awful stuff. But if you put it together and you make a good composition of it and you represent it in a certain way, it actually becomes intriguing. And I think, what you did with your idea of representing how wind power could do something, I think it's really great, because it really I think it's a kind of representation that really it goes beyond what you're trying to show. I think it's really sort of you're connecting to what people are thinking about, and I think it's actually the start of maybe a storyline. In our office, we use this type of graphics very often in a storyboard. So we make these kind of drawings, we color them in a similar way, and then we make elements move, and we make the windmill spin, and we make the cars run, and we use that in an animation eventually. And it's just to explain a story. And I think when you start that narrative from, let's say, a child's perspective, it's always very, very strong. So I think it's great. I think I would actually love to sort of take the elements that are represented here and then translate them to sort of the reality of the implementation of wind energy, and then still ask people, why are you against this?
But and exactly, kind of, there is these questions that why are people still against? I mean, we are slowly kind of changing, I think, but still there are some issues of some people don't believe it, and this is a huge number of populations if you look at it. But girls from the Turkey, Sevalov, for example. In your design in the Loop City, you kind of introduce many different approaches in a skyscraper, in the completely different environments, in a huge skyscraper, basically. and that's we get this from neighborhood scale to the big city scale. And what was your reason? Was it related to the city that you live in, actually, that you thought about it in a bigger scale?
I think his internet, he's having some trouble about it. Maybe I can answer that question. First of all, we want to sorry about that because our English is not great and sometimes we don't understand what they're talking about. If you can write the question to the chat, maybe we can understand easily. Sorry about that.
I barely hear you, unfortunately. So I will try to message the questions. So if you can answer that, that would be wonderful. Irina, would you like to continue? I will write the questions meantime.
Yeah. So we're still wait for our winners to have a look at the question and to come with an answer with that. So, as yourselves, how are you contributing personally to improving the situation about energy, and how are your consciousness, on what level is working towards improving the situation and let's say stopping it from leading to an energy crisis? So is there anything you are trying to contribute and to let's say make it slower to slow the process of ending up in a situation when we will actually need to have a demand of powerless or energy independent elements? What do you think, guys? What are the small steps you are doing yourselves?
Just trying to pay my energy bills.
What kind of energy?
Electricity.
Is it, what kind of source is it coming from?
Actually, I know it because the company the supply the electricity supplies to my apartment, which I think is Eon, which is dominant for the renewable energy use. Not sure where it came from. Might be wind, might be solar, but it is more expensive than the ones from fossil fuels. So
you are actually you actually found a way to switch from the usual like energy sources to something that is that's sustainable. It's good. That's amazing, actually.
yes, it is. Sometimes they give you a choice whether you pay more for cleaner energy, but I don't know how things working here in UK, but like I'm currently working in I'm currently working in practice, like in practice designing schools for local students, and the process we are currently doing is focusing on net zero carbon in use. So basically, once the school is built, the school doesn't need any energies from the other suppliers. They can generate energy from the solar panels attached onto the roof, or using the green roof or rainwater harvesting systems to harvesting the plants within the area. So considerably, it is expensive to be honest, but it's something we can literally contribute to.
It pays off. All right. Anyone else would like to share their own experience on how are they contributing to slow down the process of ending up in a scenario where we actually need to create everything like energy independent? Girls?
I can say something. First of all, I'm sorry about my sounds. I got sick. And my English speaking, I'm too bad to
I think it's a kind
in
of
English.
important, a little bit question, because we talk about this, great ideas, okay, how we can save the world, but actually what we are doing on our own.
All right.
Yeah.
In your own words, no worries about that. Just let us know about your experience.
I'm trying to understand and wait for that. I can explain our projects. I can start
Will?
to explain. In our project, we can say that our project is
So we had the
by-
discussion with Irina about it, asking ourselves this question as well. And okay, we what we mentioned was, for example, not eating meat so much. Me personally, or trying to recycle basic things like this. But the further question from that was basically, is it enough? If we are if we are actually putting those changes, small changes, is it actually contributing positively to the climate change? Or maybe there is something that we are not able to do it on our own, and maybe that the government should do it. And this is what we are protesting a little bit. Yeah, when we go to the streets, okay, we strike, we protest for the climate change, but except of that and these small steps that we are doing, is there anything else? Is it enough? What is your opinion about this?
Maybe on the bright side, because we're being sort of bombed with disaster scenarios, which I think are seriously to be considered. On the other hand, I also read a very positive message saying, with all the changes we've already been doing and all the measures we've taken, we have decreased the global warming with 1.5 degrees. So if we hadn't done anything as the global society, it would be already 1.5 degrees warmer than it is right now. So that's the good news. The bad news is that it's still not good enough. So we have to keep going. But I do think that there are massive changes taking place. What I always say within my company, and I would like to stress it to you guys too, is that the one thing that you are obliged to do, everybody is obliged to do in my company, is that we need to work effectively. And it's not because I'm solely profit driven, it's because we are impact driven, which means that you only have a very limited lifespan. And we happen to be a generation that has quite some challenges to take care of, because this energy crisis is just one. It might lead to some wars. It's probably going to lead to some more migration, but it's only one part of climate change. So the climate crisis is a large one, but that's relatively only threatening the extinction of humankind. The Earth will exist even if it has been warmer in the past thousands of years than it will be in the next 100 years. So, but the biggest disaster we are facing is biodiversity collapse, and that is the one that we need to be focusing on, I believe, because fixing the energy crisis is relatively technically possible, but fixing the biodiversity collapse, that's going to take much, much longer, and it has much wider effects, not only on humankind, but on all species. So I believe that we have to sort of turn this thing around. We happen to be in the fortunate position that we have the capacity to think about it, and also that we live in, I guess, relatively safe places in the world, so that we have the freedom to have evenings like this and think about these things. So what I say to everybody in my office, but also to the students I teach, and I would like to also stress it to you guys: use your time effectively. I think doing competitions like this is really great because it's enlarging your creativity. but also really use it. So please do not become an investment banker or some other sort of not very needed profession for this challenge. Use your capacities as a designer, and whether it is in designing buildings or cities, doesn't matter. But be sure to make that change in every project that you do. And so I think personally, it's less relevant what you do yourself, because I think in the end everybody will be doing it. And I also believe that it's good if you do something yourself. And you find out that it's actually a minor systematic change, like eating less meat, that's not a big thing. So if you find out that works, you could start thinking about how could I make it a systemic change. Like, for instance, Siki, you said you were studying in Manchester at the university.
Yeah.
Are they serving meat in the cafeteria in Manchester?
Well, mostly vegan, I think, but they are serving meat.
Challenge it. In my company, there's no more meat. In the company of the clients that I work for, if I see them still having lunch and meat, I ask them, why? Why are you serving meat in your lunch? Why? Nobody needs a meat in their lunchtime. We haven't been doing it for the last 5 years. Nobody misses it. Minor change, big effect. So I think, and it also helps if you then have sort of CO2 certificates that companies need, And now people in the Netherlands, they are challenging, for instance, their pension funds. Because the pension funds of public servants are investing still in fossil fuel companies. And now all the people who are actually doing research in the university and who are teaching students about how we can go to a fossil-free world, and their pension fund is investing in Shell. So they demonstrated against it, and they say, you need to stop this. Or now next year, they're going to stop investing in fossil fuels. I think these are things that you can do. You really look at the systemic level and see how you can turn things around slightly. I wrote a letter to the city of Amsterdam. Why are there still cars they have people checking the parking places, right? So and now they have these scanning cars. So they have these cameras on top and they scan all the license plates. So I wrote them a letter last year. I said, well, I see a car driving in my street. It's scanning the things and it's not an electric car. Why not? Why did you not make it an electric car? I did this, yes, and then I got an email back. It's a company, we have a process, but in the next round of tenders, we will surely make sure that it's electric cars. And I don't know if it's my letter, or if it's everybody saying this. Same thing, they're in front of my house. They cut down 8 trees because they were too big and there was difficulty with storm, and the trees are not coming back. So I just wrote an email to the city. When are the trees coming back? And somebody said, oh, good that you remind us. Yes, we still need to replant those trees. Fucking plant them. So that's like a big bit of biomass that you can. So I also think and then try to find out why wasn't it replanted immediately? Why did it take so long? What was the reason? What are your internal processes? And then try and figure out what's going wrong and if you can help them. So I think that's actually a much more interesting thing than just. I think we have to sort of acknowledge that the fact that we are alive is not good for the planet. Huh? And I was even stupid enough to raise 2 kids, so I'm really not doing very good for my CO2 footprint. But I think if you start thinking that way, it's not going to work. I also think if you start bashing football players because they fly private jets. Yeah, it's a way of getting a point across. But I think if Lionel Messi uses his private jet 10% less, that's also a big thing. And then if we, decide, to just go by plane on a holiday once every 3 years instead of every year, that's also better. And then maybe other people can make other sacrifices. I think if everybody tries and makes changes that don't really change your quality of life, but change the system a little bit. And apart from that, I also believe that we need systemic changes. So I do believe that there should be massive tax on flights, and I also think we will go into a time where, for instance, for my kids, it will not. I think it should not be normal when they are 18 that they can just fly around the world. It wasn't normal for my parents. It was normal for me, but I think it will not be normal for my kids because they happen to live in a time where the planet can just not sustain that. So I think some things will just become hugely expensive because we cannot sustain it.
But do you think that these changes will actually happen, or maybe the human comfort that we have, even with the travels by flights?
I think this is all a very all of this are political elements that need democratic processes, and the difficulty with flying is that it's an international thing. That after the Second World War, everybody agreed that it should be available for everybody. So that's why there's no tax on kerosene, because the idea is that if people can meet each other, that there will never be war again. Well, that didn't really work out, but I do think it helped. Yeah, I think in general I also think it's powerful to use this narrative that is your name Will? I don't know, but in your pleasant drawing, yeah, that Will used in her drawings. If you can use this kind of narrative to explain that these things are also temporary, yeah? Because I explain a lot of time. People are sort of protesting against windmills everywhere, not in my backyard. But nobody realizes that the average windmill is only there for 20 years and then it's gone. So what you are protesting against is 20 years of discomfort. Well, maybe you should just accept it and divide this discomfort for the next 20 years. And yeah, I gave a lecture in Brussels once, and a student asked me, can we afford to have these processes on if a windmill can be placed or not? Can we afford it? I said, no, in Belgium you can't. You should be placing a windmill everywhere where you can, and then you still don't have enough sustainable energy. So I think basically Belgium should just accept that there are windmills where nobody wants them for the next 20 years, and then maybe the problem is solved. And the same I think about international flight. I think it should just be hugely expensive for about 20 years, and then maybe the industry has evolved and found alternative ways. But yeah, this is a very I think right now as societies, we are trying to find the things that don't really hurt us that much. So we're putting windmills in the sea. We're trying to think about hydrogen as a possible fuel, and everybody hopes that we can solve it that way. Well, I think if everybody reduces his energy consumption, we can go a long way. But maybe some drastic changes are needed too. But the question is always, will we all dare to do it? And can you democratically do that? But
I think everyone needs to be educated in how to properly educated from a very young age on how everything they do affect the planet, and maybe we can create common, let's say,
Goal.
common consciousness about how it goes and so on, and hopefully the next generation or the generation that's coming now will definitely improve and make.
I think that will help, but personally, I think we usually think in four categories of people, and it has to do with two factors. Either you can or you cannot, or either you want to or you don't want to. So people who want to but they cannot change, those are the people you want to go for with your you want to help. The people who don't want to but who can, and I mean these are the assholes buying SUVs and living in inner cities and then complaining that there's too much traffic. I mean,
private jets.
Sorry?
9 minutes flights on private jets, which were the case in the use.
Well, the reality is that the majority of cars sold today is an SUV. So, I mean, in my country it is. So even the electric cars, the majority are SUVs. They are super big and heavy, and they consume a lot of energy, but they are electric. So the thing is that what people are aware, but they don't really, even if they can do something, they don't always do it. And I think, so either you make it very comfortable for these people, or you just use the language that everybody speaks, which is money. So
It's
if you make something more expensive, people will not use it anymore. So I think that's basically the best steering function you have.
It's very
Yeah, and
not
sorry,
very
Ray.
easy on a luxury you're used to for such a long time, and when you know that you are able to afford that, even a mentality which is coming, you know that you're doing something correct, but you're not going to give up because it's just something you're used to. So it's
And no, I'm living in Spain, and I see that in the last year they introduced the really cheap train ticket. Like you get, for example, free rides when you take 10 trips in a period of 2 months. So you can have really for young people 90% of discount for train tickets. For any trips, I can go to France for €3, and this, I think, this positive changes that the government brings, and this is what pushes actually these people to do something positive, because they, as Emile said, sometimes they want to but they can't. But with the initiatives like this, they want and they can find and they finally can. And I think this is what sometimes is needed from the government to push up this change.
on the other hand, we have flights which are cheaper than the train tickets. So what can we do? Like I can buy a flight ticket to Dublin, let's say, for like 15 quids, 15 pounds, and then if I go via alternative ways, it's like 5 times more expensive. So it's crazy.
And longer, and needs human comfort here. No, but now we get curiosity. We get the hottest day now a few days ago. Yeah, ever the hottest day since we started recording, and that was the day also where we got the biggest number of airplanes in the air on the same day. Just maybe accident or not accident, but still, it's we are fighting with something, and we are doing still the same.
Yeah, but I think the interesting thing that it's a wicked problem, but that I think I do advise you guys not to make it a single issue discussion, because well, take Siki. Siki, I suspect that you have family not living in Manchester, right?
Yeah, they're all living back
Probably,
in China. So.
and so I did some analysis on Schiphol Airport and new possibilities of relocating it. And one of the things we figured out is that I think 60% of all flights is visiting friends and family. So that's not people who just go for fun. That's not people who don't care. That's people who go and visit their parents because they are ill, or who go and visit their child because they haven't seen them in 5 years. This is also a result of our globalizing world, which we love. So I think sort of pausing that is a way, but I think international governments should be pushing the industries to become more sustainable. You can already fly electric in a distance of 1,000 kilometers with a 10-seater, but this is just something which is economically not viable. So business, companies who've just been buying Airbuses, they want to fill them for the next 50 years, or the next 20 years, because it takes that long to have the return on investment. So I think these are things that we need to change. But that's just on aircraft. But think about your clothes. I had the previous Belgium national architect. He advised me once. He said, what you should also do is just wear your clothes until they fall apart by the threads. That's also a good way to do something. What Siki was saying: eat less meat, take less trips, build more cities, live in cities. Make sure that people have everything that they need for close to home. And so all these things are, I think, helping out. Yeah.
Getting a bit back, girls, would you be ready to do the project now? And are they here?
I think they get some connections as well.
Yeah. So getting a bit
Feel free to message in the chat, and just in case, girls. We will be happy to read it loud as well.
Us with the response on the questions we are currently discussing. We'll be more than happy to have some introspective on your project as well and the story behind it. So yeah, let us know when you're ready.
And yeah, Emile, you started talking about the kind of change on, for example, we build more cities and this influence on architecture and this energy independent architecture. And this is it leads to a question that I wanted to ask since the kind of beginning, how it affects the beauty, how this energy independent architecture affects the beauty of architecture. Because very often we imagine this, with the solar panels on the rooftops, or even this wind turbines in the backyard, or full of installations and things like this. And what is your opinion about this? I know it is subjective, so I'm just interested in your own subjective opinion about this. If we can make it beautiful, or do we have already beautiful solutions for that?
I think. Yeah, but you're tickling me now, because this is the sort of the core of some discussions that we have in the office too. I can only relate to a lecture I once got from a Dutch office, who said that the most beautiful architecture has always been built in times of scarcity. And then you fall back on universal principles like symmetry, like simple materialization, uniform of materialization. And every time that you had periods of massive wealth, you would get sort of this hideous architecture, like the Baroque and those kind of styles that I don't really think that they actually sustained as valuable architecture in the long run. So also the peak of modernism was at a time that there was scarcity. So and I think the postmodernism period that I think we are still in has led to quite some also a lot of diversity. Anything goes. You can make buildings that look like mirrors. You can make buildings that look like blobs. Anything goes. It doesn't matter. And I actually think that these constraints that are being put on architects right now, that's good. That they are challenged to come back to the essence of what a shelter means and why it needs to be built like that, and maybe also sort of more awareness of the specific position of a building, because I think we are still in a period that some buildings, they could be in China, but they might as well just be in Spain or in India, or who cares? And sometimes buildings are copied. And I think I think that's not the essence of architecture. It's not furniture. It's something that has a location, and it should work in a certain way and has a connection to a local culture and society, and it should also reflect that in a way. But basically it should just work, And I think we came from a time that people really didn't really care. Anything goes. So I think it's good that there is a reset on that part.
So the essence, basically, we hope for the essence of the building. Yeah. Now we are getting back to Semper, 18th century books and 4 walls and a roof. Yeah. Now, Will, before I go further, Will, would you like to add anything to that, or your opinion, or your own opinion? So, Siki, as you want.
Okay, well, because Emile was mentioning about the lifespan of a wind turbine blades, and then it reminds me of how, because I know that architecture practice in Germany and also Netherlands are starting to consider to reuse those wind turbine blades, because they are quite considerably good architectural materials. They can be made into concrete, or they can be used a shape to build things like bridge or like the roof or the claddings as the building envelope. So it is something we bring into our is sort of an objective. It's something like objects to bring in as building concept. Like, well, maybe it is. For me, it is quite aesthetic. It's beautiful, but some may don't think so. But it is something we can bring in as an objective when thinking about design. So it's no longer a triangle or squares, but also we got these certain elements. So that's one thing. But the other, like those renewable energy or sort of decentralized energy productions, when you consider it's bring next to the house, next to apartment, like solar panels or wind turbines. There's a tower. There's an apartment tower being built in London several years ago. I forgot the name. It's like the street tower or street apartment in South London. So it got 3 wind turbines, which cost £150 million to, and they don't work because of the noise it created. But it's quite elegant. It's strong concept saying, okay, that's the human effort to trying to make it feasible, make it work, make it feasible. And the thing turns out to be maybe we can try to reduce the wind turbine noise, or we can try to use some smaller ones, like smaller spans, which generates more to widely distribute in the cities, or if we can combine with like solar panels or maybe less glazing facades to the source of the building, which is overheating the building in the summer days.
But I think, Siki, it also starts with, as a designer and as an architect, to put yourself in a more vulnerable position and really to think of what is really important. And we did this for an urban plan that we made in the Netherlands last year, where we told the client, we said, look, there are 2 things super important here. Is that we improve the biodiversity in this plot where we're going to make this new part of the city. And the second thing, which is very important, is that it's energy neutral, so that it's or energy positive. So if we take those 2 things, well, what we did is we knew that there was no possibility for any dramatic sustainable energy resources. So we had to do it with all electric and solar power. So basically, we just asked an energy advisor, and we said, what is the optimum shape of a building within this urban plan that can still have its own power? And we came to a building block volume of 6 layers, where you can have a energy neutral building. And I recently spoke to an architect, and he's now developed the concept of 8-story building that has the perfect balance of being energy neutral without any installations. So they don't have any heating. It's a passive house. So it's just designed in a way that it has a constant temperature. So it absorbs the heat, and it keeps the heat in winter, and it cools down in summer. And it doesn't need any installations. So just needs to generate a bit of electricity for the use of some equipment in the house because people live there, but it doesn't need anything else. And I think these kind of concepts are very powerful, especially when you can translate them to larger urban logic.
I personally agree kind of to that, to put less. But I understand also Siki perspective that you wanted, I think, to try to find a way to actually implement those the technologies into the building in a beautiful way, right? Did I understood you right?
Yeah. Well, it's both possible ways, I think, and also, well, what I'm myself is still part of the process. Like we try to reduce the glaze in use in the south side of the building, which you can too much solar edges through the daylights, but then also can use wind or to create a passive design to reduce the energy cost. Well, that's both ways of things, and they also bring, because these are the function that brings in the new elements within the building, which that's gonna affect our like new area of different objects of concepts.
But Siki, can I ask you a personal question?
Yeah.
So your you're practicing architecture, right? And you're studying now.
I'm working in architecture practice.
And you're also working in an agency, yeah. And you care about the subject, yeah. So you feel the urgency for doing something about the sustainability of the world, and you wanna make a change with the work you do, right?
You want the truth or lie?
Okay, let's just say you would, yeah. Then I think there could be one narrative is then you could suggest that either you go and work in a place in the world where you can make a massive difference. So you go and look for the place where the energy system is very bad and where you can make a huge change. And places like India, I think you can make a huge change because the threat of overconsumption of energy is huge, and because it's such a huge population, very dense built areas, you can make a great change. But you could also do something less dramatic, stay in the UK, but focus on where the assignment in the UK is, and that is not in new buildings. So I predict that the architecture firms that focus on transforming existing built environments, that they are going to be the big successful firms that make the biggest change. So if you are thinking about starting your own business, here's the free advice: focus on existing buildings.
It is. There is a atelier or studios in University of Manchester, which is called Continuing in Architecture, which is focusing on reuse the current building as a starting point to trying to give it new function or give it new life. And also, well, if you definitely know that in UK, we normally we mostly deal with the great listed buildings, which has the historical values, which it is a plain, because every building, there are like certain amount of buildings you can't even touch its facades, and you have to reuse it. So that's good things to start with.
Okay.
Yeah, sounds amazing. Like,
I think we get quite a nice summary and without an agreement, but I think that's okay. Because we get a younger perspective and more essential perspective over here. And I think that's something to consider on our own. And thank you so much, guys. Because we get this simplicity, the essence, the purity of architecture, where we actually try to be scarce of the new technologies and reach to the minimum, and also to where we can actually use the technology, this younger visions where we put it where it's possible and make a positive impact on that.
And it's amazing that that we all reached a common point that reusing the already existing built environment is very important, and it's the thing that actually will help us to reach let's say a less traumatic scenario in the future. So that's amazing. Even I implemented the strategy of adaptive reuse in my final project, so this is what I'm looking forward to as well. So yeah, guys, thank you very much for your insights and for discussion we've had. Really sorry we couldn't hear more from the winners, from the girls, but hopefully we'll catch up somehow. We're
internet era, and we'd love to talk more. And I'm sure we could talk more about those topics, and they were really insightful. I know. Would you like to add anything to these discussions?
Or do you have your questions to us yourself? That's the reverse side, let's say.
Are you asking me?
All of you, if you get any questions.
No, General, I would just like to compliment you on the organization also of the competition. I think it was really nice to see the output, and I hope you keep it up. It's very inspiring.
Thank you. We got the team behind it, and so we'll let them know that now we are happy that we are part of it, and it's a good, I think, ideological kind of abstractions of different ideas. As I was messaging you, kind of sometimes avoiding these constraints that we have in practice, which is sometimes I think needed for new ideas to bring, because we might be sometimes stopped by those money, let's say, or governments. So I think it's a very positive thing.
Yeah, and the discussions in between, like people coming from different cultures, backgrounds, and everything, are probably the best catalyst of new ideas. So this is what we are trying in a non-direct way to reach here. So thank you very much, guys, for your time and for accepting our let's say sort of a invitation challenge. The challenge for ones because of the difference of the time zone. So that's amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and enjoy your evening.
Thank you. Bye.
It was a
Thank
pleasure,
you, Will.
guys.
And thank you, Will, for getting up this early. I hope you have a good day.
Yeah. That's the international meeting hosted.
Bye.
Bye.